I checked into rehab on a rainy Tuesday, clutching a single duffel bag and what was left of my dignity. It wasn't my first time, but something about that day felt final. Like I'd either get clean this time or never make it back. I was 34, a washed-up ex-sales manager with a DUI, a destroyed relationship, and a father I hadn't spoken to in months. I had burned almost every bridge, but this wasn't about getting back what I lost. It was about finding whatever was left. My father's voice echoed in my head as they took my phone and wallet. "You get one more shot," he'd said, "but don't expect a safety net." Harsh, sure, but not untrue. He was a hard man, not cruel but rigid, proud. Built a logistics company from nothing and raised us to believe failure was a choice. And then there was my brother Mason, 2 years younger, slick, charismatic, always knew how to land on his feet. While I was spiraling through pills and missed appointments, Mason had been quietly cozying up to Dad, helping with errands, taking over meetings, acting like the prodigal son who never strayed. In truth, Mason was never interested in loyalty. He was interested in power, and when I stepped out of the picture, even temporarily, he saw opportunity. I didn't know it then. I was too focused on group therapy, meal schedules, and reading laminated inspirational quotes taped to walls. But while I was learning how to be human again, Mason was turning our family legacy into his personal ATM. It started small. At least that's what I'd later discover. A wire transfer here, a loan from one of Dad's dormant accounts there. Nothing anyone would notice in the short term. Then came the bigger moves, liquidating stocks, changing insurance beneficiaries, manipulating our father into updating documents, all while I was tucked away, trying to rebuild myself. 3 weeks into rehab, I got a letter from Dad, handwritten, short, cold. "Glad you're getting help. Mason's handling things, don't worry about the business." That last line stung. I never asked to be cut out, I just needed time. But to them, my absence was confirmation. I was done, irrelevant, expendable. I cried that night, quietly, so no one in the bunk room would hear, but it wasn't just grief, it was fury, not at my father, not even at Mason yet. I was furious at myself for letting things get this bad, for giving them reason to doubt me, for handing over my birthright. Without even a fight, but something inside me started to shift that night, a cold, sharp resolve. I wasn't out of the game yet. And Mason, he had no idea that a year earlier, during one of Dad's health scares, I'd been given full power of attorney. It was supposed to be temporary, but no one had ever revoked it, not even Mason. That document, tucked away in a folder, somewhere in Dad's study, was my lifeline, and Mason had no clue it still existed. I didn't know exactly what he was doing yet, but I knew this much. When I walked out of rehab, clean, focused, and furious, I wasn't just coming back for my place in the family, I was coming back for revenge. Rehab ended on a grey morning in March. No fanfare, no hugs, just a clipboard, with a final signature and a weak good luck from the front desk. I didn't expect anyone to be waiting for me outside, and no one was. I walked 2 blocks in the cold before calling a rideshare. Destination, home, except I didn't really have one. My apartment lease had lapsed while I was inside. Most of my stuff was in storage, the rest probably stolen or thrown away by now. So I did the only thing that made sense. I went to Dad's. It was a long drive out to the lake. He'd bought that house after selling our childhood place, said it was quieter, easier on the nerves. I always suspected it was to get away from the city, and maybe from us. I hadn't been there in almost a year. When I pulled into the gravel driveway, something felt wrong. The mailbox was gone. The porch lights were off, even though it was midday and cloudy. The front door, locked. I knocked. Nothing. After 5 minutes of waiting, I walked around back. The deck furniture was gone. The grill was missing. There were Signs in the windows, realtor signs. That's when it hit me. He'd sold it. I tried calling Dad. No answer. Then Mason, straight to voicemail. I stood there in the drizzle, backpack over one shoulder, staring at the home that used to smell like cedar and coffee, and now belonged to someone else. That night, I stayed in a motel off Route 12. Peeling wallpaper, buzzing fluorescent light, cigarette burns in the comforter. I lay on the mattress, staring at the ceiling, trying to convince myself this was just miscommunication. Maybe Dad had moved. Maybe Mason forgot to tell me. But deep down, I knew. Mason had taken over, and he hadn't planned to tell me anything. The next day, I went to the bank. My name was still on a few family accounts. Dad had set them up years ago for business continuity. The clerk, an older woman named Debbie, recognized me immediately. "Oh, you're back," she said cautiously. "Yes, I just need to check the status of a few accounts under the family trust," I said calmly. She hesitated, then typed something into her screen. Her eyebrows raised. "Well, that's strange." I leaned forward. "What is?" "These accounts were closed 3 weeks ago. Funds were consolidated into an LLC, transferred under a new EIN. I felt my stomach drop. "Whose name is on that LLC?" She clicked again, paused. "I'm sorry, I need authorization to—" I didn't wait. I pulled out a folder. "The power of attorney, signed and notarized, still legally valid." Her eyes widened. "Hold on," she said, and left. Her station. 10 minutes later, I was sitting in a side room with a printout in front of me. Mason's name was everywhere: signatures, wire transfers, legal maneuvers. In 1 month, he'd moved over $300,000 into shell accounts, liquidated half of Dad's investments, signed off on the sale of the lake house, even requested new credit cards, all under the pretense that I was unavailable. I wasn't just betrayed, I was erased. But the documents proved something else, too. Mason had no idea. The POA was still active. If he had, he never would have used his own name on so many forms. That was his arrogance, his blind spot. He thought I was out of the picture, dead weight discarded, but I was very much alive. That night, I didn't sleep. I sat at a diner booth until 4 a.m., sketching out a plan on napkins. I made a list of every account touched, every document filed, every lie told. I cross-referenced dates, timelines, patterns. Mason didn't just want the money, he wanted the whole identity, the business, the legacy, even Dad's trust. Well, he could have the lie he built, because I was going to take it all back, piece by piece. And I'd start with the one thing he couldn't forge, my legal authority. You'd be surprised how fast you can go from powerless to dangerous when you got the law on your side. And Mason, my own brother, had unknowingly handed me a loaded weapon, a paper trail with his name on every illegal transaction. I just had to figure out how to use it. First step, a lawyer, not a cheap one. I dug into what little I had left. Some savings Dad had squirreled away in a trust under my name, and hired Alicia Merritt, a probate and fraud specialist with a reputation for precision and bloodlust. I met her in a glass-walled office in the city. She was sharp, mid-40s, all navy, blue and steel. I laid out every document I had, bank transfers, emails, even a Christmas card Mason sent to a realtor thanking them for a quick and painless sale. She didn't smile. She just said, "We're going to kill him with this." The next few weeks were a blur of filings, subpoenas, and sealed motions. We moved in silence, no warning. I didn't even tell my dad because I wasn't sure if he was part of it or just a victim too broken to know. Meanwhile, I played my role. I made nice with Mason, reached out with a fake tone of reconciliation, texted things like, "Hey, just got out. I'm trying to get grounded. Maybe we can talk." His response came quick. He pretended to be overjoyed. "Of course, man. So glad you're better. We should catch up." Snake, We met for coffee the next Sunday. He looked cleaner than I'd ever seen him. Gold watch, new haircut, confident. "You look good," he said. "Different." "You too," I lied. I let him talk. He spun stories about how hard things had been, how he managed what he could while I was away. I nodded, played dumb. He never mentioned the POA. Never even asked about it. That's how I knew he was scared. In the background, Alicia was preparing our first strike, a court injunction, to freeze the stolen funds. We hit him on a Wednesday afternoon. By 4 p.m., 4 of his accounts were locked. By 6, the county clerk had accepted our motion to invalidate the sale of the lake house under fraud. At 9 p.m., Mason called me. "What the hell is going on?" He barked. I kept my voice calm. "You forgot something," I said. I still had power of attorney. Dead silence. Then, click. The next day I visited Dad at the assisted living facility. He was thinner, quieter. The spark in his eye had dimmed. I sat with him for an hour before bringing it up. "Dad, did you know Mason sold the house?" He blinked, slowly. "What house?" I knew then. Mason hadn't just betrayed me. He'd isolated our father, moved him to a smaller room, in a cheaper facility, and kept him doped up on sedatives. Why? Because Dad was the only other person who might have stopped him. I left that visit more focused than ever. This wasn't about money anymore. It was about principle. I called Alicia and said, "I want everything, every asset back. I want his name. On the news. I want him to feel what I felt in that motel room." She paused. "That might get ugly." "Good," I said. "Let's make it ugly. You never forget the exact moment you become someone else." For me, it was a Thursday morning, 2 weeks after we froze Mason's accounts. I was parked outside the courthouse in a rusted-out pickup I borrowed from a friend. No music, just silence. I stared straight ahead and whispered to myself, "You're not the broken one anymore. You're the reckoning." We filed the full civil suit that day: fraud, elder abuse, theft, breach of fiduciary duty. Alicia had stitched it together with surgical precision. The lawsuit painted a picture of a man who took advantage of a vulnerable family member while another was away fighting demons. Mason didn't even see it coming. He was served the next morning in front of his office. A courier handed him a thick envelope while he was stepping out of his shiny new Audi. The look on his face, caught between confusion and pure panic, was everything I'd hoped for. But that was just the beginning. I went public. I sent carefully. Crafted letters to the family, friends, even former neighbors. Not dramatic, not emotional, just facts. Bank statements, property transfers, proof. People we grew up with, people who once praised Mason for stepping up while I was away, suddenly had questions. Big ones. Then I took it to the next level. I filed a report with the state's Adult Protective Services. You want to see a system move fast? Tell them a man sold his father's home out from under him while sedated and locked in a nursing home that smells like bleach and despair. They launched an investigation within 48 hours. A social worker visited Dad, interviewed staff, pulled medical records, discovered, surprise, that Mason had changed Dad's primary physician to a shady clinic that overprescribed sedatives. Why? So Dad wouldn't ask questions. Now we were on fire. The court granted an emergency hearing. I sat across from Mason, in the courtroom for the first time in years. He wore a suit that cost more than my rehab stay, but he looked smaller somehow. Hollow, like all the expensive polish couldn't hide what was rotting underneath. The judge didn't waste time. Froze additional assets, assigned a guardian ad litem for Dad, and scheduled a full hearing for 3 weeks out. As we left the courtroom, Mason tried to corner me. "You're blowing this out of proportion," he hissed. "You don't know what it was like, trying to hold everything together while you disappeared into your pity party." I stopped, turned, looked him straight in the eye. "I was getting clean. You were getting rich." He had no response, but The best was yet to come. That night, I released a private message from Mason, one he sent to a realtor, thanking them for keeping everything off the books, so the paperwork wouldn't get complicated with family signatures. I posted it anonymously to a local community forum. It went viral within hours, and with it, so did public opinion. This wasn't just a family squabble anymore. This was a betrayal. People who used to call him a great son now called him a predator. But me, I was just getting started. There's a moment right before a storm breaks when everything goes quiet, like the universe itself is holding its breath. That was the courtroom on the day of the final hearing. Mason showed up with a team of attorneys, all tailored suits and smug smiles. I showed up with Alicia, a printed binder, and a single silver pen that used to be my father's. My hands didn't shake, not anymore. The judge had read every page. The financial trail was airtight, the sedatives, the false physician change, the property sales done in secret, without consent. The real estate email sealed it, but it was the witness that broke the room. Dad. He'd stabilized enough, off the unnecessary meds, clear-eyed, lucid, to testify. Slowly, but with full awareness, he told the judge he never gave Mason permission to sell the house, that he didn't even know it had been sold until I visited. He looked at me then across the courtroom. I thought I'd raised better sons, he said, his voice breaking just slightly, but only one of them came back for me. Mason's face turned pale. The judge didn't hesitate. He stripped Mason of all financial control over Dad's affairs, ordered a full audit, froze Mason's assets permanently pending restitution, and perhaps most satisfying of all, ruled that the sale of the lake house had been unlawful. That meant one thing: the house was coming back. But even that wasn't the end. The criminal charges came next. The state filed for financial exploitation of a vulnerable adult. Mason's lawyers tried to negotiate, to spin it, but too much had come out. The private physician, the altered documents, the money trail. He was indicted, publicly, and suddenly, his Audi, his polished image, his slick social presence, none of it could hide the rot. I watched from a bench outside the courthouse as he walked past the cameras with his lawyer, head down, no smirk left. I didn't smile. But inside, there was peace. 3 months later, I stood in the hallway of our old lake house. The walls still smelled like summer, even after all the paperwork and cleaning crews. I walked into what used to be my childhood bedroom. It was empty, but not in a sad way, clean, open, like a blank canvas. I opened a window. The air off the lake hit me like a memory. And for the first time in what felt like years, I could breathe without the weight of shame. I wasn't the failure. I wasn't the addict. I wasn't the brother who vanished. I was the one who came back, the one who remembered, the one who fought. Mason eventually took a plea deal, restitution, probation, and a formal admission of guilt. No prison. I'd be lying if I said I didn't want more. But sometimes justice isn't about how much someone loses. It's about how much you reclaim. Dad now lives in a comfortable care facility with real nurses, proper oversight, and weekly visits from me. We talk more than we ever did before. He says he's proud of me. I still go to meetings. I still struggle sometimes. But every morning I wake up in that lake house, drink my coffee on the porch, and know exactly who I am. The storm passed, and I'm still standing.